The night he confessed, the kitchen smelled like burnt oregano and somebody else's perfume. It was 11:58 p.m. The candles on our anniversary table had drowned in wax, one still sputtering beside the lasagna I'd kept warm for hours. I was counting the minutes between excuses when the door opened, and he walked in calm, humming, like guilt had rhythm. The first thing that hit me wasn't his face. It was the scent: jasmine, bergamot, champagne, skin that wasn't mine. Ethan didn't even flinch when he saw the table. He grabbed a beer, popped the cap, and said, "You waited up?" I smiled without smiling. "Hard to sleep when dinner keeps, hoping you'll show." He leaned against the fridge, took a sip, eyes on the flickering candle. "I should tell you something before you hear it from someone else." That line should have prepared me. It didn't. "I slept with Tamsin," he said, voice level, almost bored. "Today. Office. Her car. Hotel. I don't regret it." For a second, time didn't move. The clock kept ticking, like it wanted applause for surviving the silence. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just cut another piece of lasagna, fork steady. "Needs more oregano," I said. He laughed, confused. "That's it? You want drama? Try Netflix." He looked at the phone beside my plate. 17 missed calls from him. "I told you not to blow up my line tonight. She said between 7 and 10 we needed space." I blinked once. "You practiced that line too?" He set down his beer. "You're impossible to talk to." "Good," I said, "because the conversation's over." He called after me as I rinsed my plate, voice somewhere between guilt and arrogance. "You'll regret walking away from me." I turned off the faucet. "You'll regret thinking I won't." He went upstairs. The fourth step creaked the same way it always had, except tonight it sounded like a countdown. When the door shut, I stared at the empty chair across from me and whispered to no one. Tomorrow, we switch languages. No more love. Just evidence. Morning used to smell like peace, Colombian roast and sunlight through the kitchen blinds. That was my normal before everything cracked. For 17 years, Ethan and I lived by quiet rituals. Tuesdays were ours. First Tuesdays, we called them. It was my father's idea before he passed. Date your spouse, even when life gets loud. So we did. Dinner out, phones away, one night where love didn't multitask. Until lately. In the last few months, Ethan's strategic planning sessions started landing on Tuesdays too. At first, I believed him. Belief is a muscle. It stays strong from overuse. He worked at Novexus Labs, director of marketing. The kind of job that came with company retreats and words like growth mindset and brand alignment. I ran the Maple Ridge Regional Library, a world of quiet chaos and dust motes. People say opposites attract. Maybe they do. But they also wear each other down. He'd leave at 7, come home smelling different. When I asked, he said the office had installed aroma diffusers for productivity. Supposedly, bergamot boosted morale. Funny how morale smelled like someone else's skin. The first real crack was the password. We used to share everything. Phone codes, bank accounts, calendars. One night, I reached for his phone to set the morning alarm habit, and he pulled it back like I'd tried to pickpocket him. "Company policy," he said. "New security protocols." 17 years together, and suddenly, I was a data breach. At the library, time moved differently. The air smelled like paper and quiet pride. Every click of the return stamp felt steadying, like proof I still existed somewhere that made sense. Avery, my sister, the lawyer, visited on lunch breaks. She'd lean on the counter, heels too sharp for a place full of toddlers and retirees. "Check your joint accounts," she said one afternoon. "If a man changes his scent and his password, he's changing more than habits." I laughed it off. "You see divorce in everything," she shrugged. "And you see loyalty where it's long gone." Ethan started missing birthdays. First my mother's, then mine. He texted, "Big meeting, rain check," during dinner with my family. My mother, ever polite, tried to defend him. "He's ambitious, dear." But Avery just murmured, "Ambitious men don't forget cake, they forget boundaries." By month 3 of his new job, Tamsin Crowell's name slipped into every conversation. "Tamsin wants this. Tamsin says that. Tamsin's visionary." I met her once at the company picnic, designer heels sinking into grass, eyes that smiled slower than her lips. She called my potato salad unexpectedly competent. Compliment or diagnosis, I never decided. After that, her name lived in our house like wallpaper. Then came the excuses dressed as logic. "We're rebranding. I'll be late." "Clara, sorry." Tamsin needed feedback. "It's all hands on deck for Q4. At some point, I realized I'd stopped cooking for 2. He'd walk in at midnight, smelling like top-shelf perfume and exhaustion that didn't come from work. I'd pretend to sleep, counting breaths between guilt and habit. Once, he slipped into bed and whispered, "You're quiet lately." I wanted to say, "You stopped giving me sentences worth answering," but silence was easier to share than confrontation. The turning point arrived in subtler ways. Small financial gaps, Uber receipts at strange hours, $89 here, $152 there, always client dinners. When I asked who the clients were, he said, "Internal stakeholders." Apparently, his conscience was one of them. He started humming again old Sinatra songs he used to whistle when we were dating. Except now, it felt cruel, like nostalgia on repeat. And me? I clung to order. I scrubbed the counters, folded the laundry tighter, brewed his coffee exactly right. 2 sugars, never cream. When the world collapses, you hold on to measurements. The Tuesday before it happened, I made lasagna from his mother's recipe, his favorite. Sharp cheddar, not mild. He said mild cheese was for people afraid of commitment. Funny. I set the table with our wedding china, the silver-rimmed plates we'd picked at Macy's when forever felt guaranteed. Beeswax candles, real butter, everything perfect. At 6 p.m., I texted, "Don't forget our night." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. By 7, the lasagna was golden. By 8, the wine opened. By 9, the candles were half their height. By 11:45, I'd called 17 times. Each ring was a little obituary for the version of him I'd married. When he finally came home, that perfume entered first. Jasmine, bergamot, and the death of denial. He didn't say sorry. He said, "I didn't regret it." And I believed him. Because some men cheat to fill emptiness. Ethan cheated to feel powerful. That night didn't just end our marriage. It ended the language of it. By morning, I wasn't his wife anymore. I was an investigator waking up inside her own crime scene. Before the confession, our life looked fine from the outside, maybe even enviable. The kind of marriage people point to at dinner parties and say, "You two are goals." I used to smile when they said that, a reflex built on repetition, not truth. Our home sat on a quiet street in Maple Ridge, 3 bedrooms, wraparound porch, maple tree that shed leaves like confetti every fall. The neighbors waved when Ethan mowed the lawn, which was rare but always performed like theater when he did it. Mrs. Delaney, 2 doors down, called us the steady couple. She meant it as praise. I heard it as diagnosis. 17 years together teaches you someone's rhythms. The way his key hits the counter, the pause before he lies, the breath before he says your name like an apology he doesn't intend to mean. I knew Ethan that way through sound, more than words. The first time I realized love could go quiet was during breakfast. He was scrolling his phone, half smiling at whatever message was lighting up his screen. I asked what was funny. He said, "Just work." Then he laughed again, softer. I remember thinking, that laugh doesn't belong to me anymore. When we met, I was 25, working night shifts at the library to pay grad school loans. He came in for the Wi-Fi and the peace. I fell for the way he looked at things like they could be improved, a cracked sign, a broken vending machine, a person. He told me I was the calm he'd been missing. I told him he was the storm I didn't know I needed. Maybe we were both half right. He proposed in that same library, in the aisle between fiction and biography. No candles, no audience, just him kneeling awkwardly on the carpet, whispering, "Say yes, before I lose my nerve." I said yes, and I meant it. We built a life from small things, grocery lists, inside jokes, Tuesday rituals. We talked about kids once, twice, then quietly stopped. He said he wasn't ready. I said okay. I said okay to a lot of things. When my father died, Ethan held me through the whole funeral. He looked solid, dependable. I didn't see the cracks starting even then, how grief made me cling tighter, and him, more distant. My dad's last words to me were simple. "Keep dating him, Lila. Never stop dating him." For years, I did. I organized dinners, vacations, little surprises. I'd leave notes in his briefcase. "You've got this. Proud of you." He stopped writing back after year 10. The decline wasn't cinematic. It was quiet erosion, the subtle ways you stop being seen. He'd come home later and later, and when he did, his phone never left his hand. Our dinners became separate. Our words turned into logistics. I'd ask how his day was, and he'd say, "Fine." I'd say, "Want dessert?" He'd say, "I'm good." Until one day, good didn't mean anything at all. Avery noticed before I did. Sisters do. She'd visit on weekends, watch him check out mid-conversation, and give me that look, the one halfway between warning and pity. "Don't make excuses for a man building an exit," she said once, slicing an apple like she was cross-examining it. "I'm not," I said, but I was. Every day. By last spring, his absence had a schedule. He'd text at 7:42 p.m., Always 7:42, running late. Don't wait up. I joked about the precision once. He smiled. Habit. Now I know what kind. The kind that hides in plain sight. Sometimes I'd look around the kitchen at night, 2 plates, one untouched, and think about how love could rot like fruit left too long in the bowl. You tell yourself it's fine until the smell gives you away. The last normal Tuesday was an act of devotion he didn't deserve. I'd planned everything. His favorite meal, the green dress he loved, the china we only used for anniversaries. The table looked like a magazine spread. He didn't walk through that door. I called. Once, twice, 17 times. By the last ring, I wasn't panicking. I was documenting. Every unanswered call built a wall between us, brick by brick. Every voicemail was a tombstone. When midnight came, and he finally returned, the version of me who waited died quietly at that table. In hindsight, the signs were all there, I just didn't want to read them. The new cologne, the late-night ride shares, the way he said, we less and I more. You don't see betrayal coming because you're too busy believing loyalty is armor. But armor rusts from the inside first. So, when Ethan said, I slept with her, it wasn't the words that broke me. It was realizing he'd been gone long before that sentence left his mouth. The next morning, as sunlight hit the same table, I stared at the empty chair and finally understood. Our marriage hadn't ended last night. It had been ending for years. I'd just been the last one to notice. That realization didn't hurt. It cleared the air, and somewhere between the smell of cold coffee and melted wax, a quiet decision started forming. Not revenge, not rage, just this. I won't beg a man to see me twice. I didn't sleep that night. The house was too still, too honest. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the kitchen clock, felt like a witness refusing to lie for me anymore. Around 2 a.m. I opened my laptop. If Ethan had made our marriage into a transaction, I was done paying interest on his mistakes. Project Silent Storm. That's what I titled the spreadsheet. The name made me smile, a small, cold smile that finally felt like mine. Column A, assets. Column B, liabilities. Column C, action items. By 3, I had 17 rows filled. Half our accounts were joint, but the mortgage, the house, the equity line, those were under my name. I remembered Avery's advice. Don't drain it, document it. Revenge that holds up in court lasts longer. So I didn't take everything. Just what was legally mine. At 3:17, the transfer confirmed. $24,000 moved safely into my personal account. I canceled his supplementary cards, froze my credit, and downloaded every bank statement. Evidence, not chaos. Next, I created folders. Financials, messages, receipts. Inside, I saved screenshots, his Uber rides at midnight, hotel charges, the email from T. Crowell at Novexus, time-stamped, archived, untouchable. When I finished, I brewed new coffee. 2 sugars. My coffee, my ritual now. At dawn, I texted Avery. Need counsel. 7 a.m. Your office. Bring claws. Her reply came fast. Finally. Then I sent one more text to Nico, my trainer at the gym, the one who owed me a favor. Breakfast at my place tomorrow? Paid gig? Just sit, eat, look charming. He answered, this sounds illegal or brilliant. I'm in. Perfect. By the time Ethan's alarm rang upstairs, I had everything ready. The files, the plan, the calm. He'd wake expecting coffee and an apology. What he'd get instead was an education. Because starting that morning, I was no longer the wife who waited. I was the woman who counted every ring, every receipt, and turned them into strategy. Silent, precise, inevitable. The morning after the confession didn't start with tears. It started with precision. By 5:30, I was in the kitchen, hair tied, sleeves rolled, every motion deliberate. Bacon hissed in the pan, eggs folded like choreography. The smell of sharp cheddar filled the room, rich and deliberate. Ethan's breakfast, made better than he deserved. I wanted everything perfect. Perfect is disarming. The window glass mirrored me. Calm face, no tremor. Eyes that didn't belong to a victim. The same woman who once planned date nights was now staging a crime scene of civility. By 7, the table gleamed. 2 plates, 2 glasses of orange juice, the wedding china again, silver rims catching the dawn. I poured coffee into his favorite mug, the one that said, world's best husband. The irony tasted sweet. Then the doorbell rang. Nico stood there 6-3, broad shoulders, smile bright enough to light bad ideas. You look way too calm for someone plotting something, he said, stepping inside. Just breakfast, I answered. Sit, eat, look natural. He whistled softly. That's not natural. That's Michelin star level revenge. I grinned. I aim high. When Ethan came down at 7:46, his hair was damp, his phone in his hand, his face unbothered. He didn't look at me. He looked at the coffee. Habit. Smells amazing, babe, he said, reaching for the mug. Oh, it is, I said. Nico thinks so too. His head snapped up. The mug froze mid-air. Nico, sitting in Ethan's usual chair, looked up mid-bite. Morning, man. You weren't kidding about these eggs. Killer. Ethan's jaw flexed. What the hell is this? Breakfast, I said simply. You're late. He looked between us, the mug lowering slowly. Who is this? Nico Alvarez, I said. Personal trainer, friend, temporary breakfast guest. Nico lifted his fork in salute. Great food, by the way. You're a lucky guy. Ethan's color shifted red, then pale. We need to talk. Alone. No, I said, buttering toast. You got your confession last night. I'm serving mine this morning. Which is what? Consequences. With hash browns. Nico choked back a laugh. Ethan didn't. This is insane, he muttered. Maybe, I said. But you started it. He slammed the mug down. I don't have time for this. I smiled. You'll find you have plenty of time now. Your corporate calendar's about to clear. His brows furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I handed him a folder, Avery's draft separation agreement. This. Read it when you're done, pretending to be surprised. He flipped it open, eyes scanning. You can't just... I can, I interrupted. And I already did. Legally, ethically, quietly. Where'd you even get this? Avery. He laughed once, a broken sound. Your sister? Of course. Smart women travel in packs. That's when his phone rang. Tamsin Crowell. Nico whistled low. Oof. Boss calling early. That's never good. Ethan silenced the screen. Don't. Answer it, I said sweetly. She'll need moral support. He didn't. He stood there, shaking slightly, mask cracking. You're trying to destroy me. No, I said, standing too. I'm just turning the lights on. You built the mess. I'm showing people the blueprints. He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. In a way, he was. Then Avery's knock came sharp, perfect timing. She walked in wearing her courtroom armor, tailored gray suit, leather briefcase, eyes like scalpel steel. Morning, she said. Mr. Ward, you've been served. Ethan sputtered. You can't just barge into my house. Avery smiled. Technically, it's Lila's house. Mortgage, title, insurance, all in her name. You're just the +1. I almost laughed. Almost. Nico stood, stretching. I'll leave you folks to your family meeting. Thanks for breakfast, I said, handing him a small envelope. He took it, winked. Anytime. Next time, let's use pancakes. They're more dramatic. As the door shut behind him, the silence felt different, charged, not broken. Avery set papers on the table. We'll file formally by end of week, but he'll get the message sooner. Ethan glared. You think this scares me? Avery didn't flinch. Not yet. It will. He left without another word. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the glass. I sat back, exhaled, and watched the coffee steam curl upward like victory smoke. For the first time in months, my pulse matched my breath. Controlled, even, alive. By mid-morning, I'd changed every password, every lock. The guest room became his exile-clean sheets, no sympathy. His boxes waited in the hallway, labeled neatly like a museum exhibit. Artifacts of a man who miscalculated. Avery called at noon. You good? Better than good, I said. Efficient. She chuckled. That's my sister. Then came the message from Tessa Ng, HR at Novexus, the one who'd always smiled kindly at company events. If you ever need to understand internal policy on supervisor relationships, hypothetically, call me. I texted back. Hypothetically interested. We spoke later that night. Tessa's voice was low, cautious. Officially, I can't tell you anything, but there are cameras in the garage, company property, and there's an investigation protocol for workplace misconduct. Would an anonymous whistleblower submission trigger it? Yes, especially if it includes timestamps and receipts. I smiled into the dark. Good to know. Over the next 3 days, Project Silent Storm grew into an orchestra of order. I scanned hotel receipts, ride-share confirmations, his email threads. I color-coded everything green for verified, red for incriminating. By the time I finished, my evidence binder was thicker than our wedding album. At night, I slept. Not deeply, but cleanly. The kind of sleep that follows clarity, not forgiveness. Ethan tried to talk twice, knocking on the guest room door. Voice softened to pity. Lila, can we just... No. You don't even know the whole story. I know enough to write the ending. He sighed, footsteps retreating down the hall. The click of his door was music. Saturday morning, I met Avery at her office. She'd printed financial reports and legal precedents, each page labeled L. Ward Strategy Draft. You've got leverage, she said. House, accounts, documentation. Don't use emotion. Use evidence. I'm not angry, I told her. I'm organized. She smiled. That's worse for him. We spent hours outlining timelines, what to file, when to speak, what not to say. Every step was surgical. By the time I left, the sun had dipped, and the world looked sharper. Back home, Mrs. Delaney was watering her hydrangeas. Everything all right, dear? Better than all right, I said. It's Tuesday soon. She nodded knowingly. Ah, first Tuesday, I remember. Yes, I said. So does he. That night, I stood at the kitchen window again, the same view but a new version of me reflected there. The moon caught the rim of my coffee cup, 2 sugars swirling at the bottom. That ritual used to mean love. Now it meant liberation. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting on anyone's return. The week after the breakfast ambush, I felt something I hadn't in months: momentum. Not joy yet, just movement. Every morning began the same. Coffee, 2 sugars, laptop open, checklist glowing. Transfer complete, folder backed up, call Avery at noon. Discipline was my antidepressant. At the library, I buried myself in projects. The smell of dust and ink steadied me. The rhythm of returned books made time predictable again. Patrons came and went, students, retirees, dreamers. But I stayed still, anchoring myself between shelves of stories where betrayal had narrative arcs and clean endings. One afternoon, my assistant Clara looked at me and said, "You seem taller this week." "Less hunched," I said. "Stress has posture." She laughed. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I was. By Friday, my house was decluttered. Not Marie Kondo tidy, strategic tidy. Every drawer held proof. Every cabinet had order. Ethan's chaos was slowly being erased, replaced by evidence and quiet. He noticed. On Saturday morning, he stood at the doorway while I reorganized the pantry. "You've been busy," he said. "Paperwork is relaxing," I replied. He hesitated. "Look, I know you're angry. I'm not angry." I turned, meeting his eyes. "Anger's loud. I'm efficient." He didn't respond. Maybe because he could see it how different I was now, how I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was removing him. Avery called that night. "You've got options," she said. Lucas Crowell's husband reached out. "Lucas? Why?" Apparently, he suspects the same affair. And he's not just bitter, he's observant. He mentioned shared hotel receipts, and he's sitting on proof that Tamsin's been using company time and assets for personal gain. I paused. He wants to trade information? He wants a clean exit. He gives us the data. We don't name him when this goes public. A slow grin formed. Tell him I accept the terms. By the following week, Project Silent Storm had evolved from recovery into offense. Tessa from HR became my quiet insider. Every message she sent was neutral, polite, coded. Reminder: camera maintenance in garage scheduled for next Friday. Translation: they're reviewing footage. Ethan started sweating through his shirts at breakfast. Not from heat, from dread. He still went to work, but his rhythm had changed. No more humming Sinatra, no more self-assured smirk. I could feel the tension crawling under his skin, like a secret about to implode. Meanwhile, I started living again. Small things at first. I went back to yoga. I joined a Thursday book club that turned into a Friday wine club. The women were mostly divorced, brilliant, and unapologetically unfiltered. It was during one of those nights after the second glass of Cabernet that someone joked, "We should bottle this, First Tuesday wines, for every woman who stopped waiting." We all laughed. But the next morning, I bought the domain. Business came naturally. I built the logo myself, clean font, silver rim like our old wedding china. Avery helped file the LLC. Clara from the library handled the social media. Nico took the photos. Within a month, First Tuesday Wines had its first pop-up event. 40 women showed up. Some came from hours away just to sit, sip, and talk. No pity circles, no heartbreak bingo, just women telling their stories like they were plotting novels. I told mine, carefully edited for peace, not pity. I said, "Once upon a time, I thought marriage meant never losing your place. Turns out, sometimes you have to close the book and write something better." The applause was quiet, but I felt it in my bones. Back home, the storm kept brewing. Ethan's mask was cracking. He came home late one night, drunk and cornered. "She won't talk to me," he slurred. "Tamsin, she's ghosting me." You happy now? I looked up from my laptop. Not yet. He stumbled closer. You think this is a game? You're ruining my life. No, I said evenly. You're doing that yourself. I'm just keeping score. He tried to laugh. It came out broken. Then he left again, slamming the door so hard a picture fell from the wall. I picked it up, the photo from our honeymoon in Banff. His arm around me, my face tilted toward the sun. I stared at the woman in that photo for a long time. She looked hopeful. I didn't envy her. 2 days later, Lucas called. His voice was steady, clinical. You were right. She's been using company accounts for personal travel. I sent the files to Avery. And there's more. You'll want to see the PAX 10 folder. What's PAX 10? Stock options window. Tamsin's been trading ahead of announcements. Ethan's name is on some of the authorizations. My pulse slowed. So he's not just unfaithful, he's complicit. I'm afraid so. Thank you, Dr. Crowell. Please, he said, sighing. Call me Lucas, and good luck. She underestimates women who document. I smiled. So does he. The more I learned, the calmer I became. Rage has a half-life. Strategy doesn't. Every revelation made me sharper, not sadder. I worked out more, ate better, slept longer. My skin cleared. My thoughts did too. By the end of the month, Ethan had moved into the guest room full-time. He said it was temporary space. I called it containment, Mrs. Delaney noticed. You look radiant, she said one morning, watering her garden. Divorce suits you. Separation, I corrected. She winked. That's French for divorce with paperwork pending. On the surface, everything looked calm. But inside, the ground was shifting. Tessa texted again. Leadership meeting scheduled. Possible disciplinary review next week. The words made me smile. I didn't gloat out loud. I just poured coffee, 2 sugars, sat by the window, and watched the sunrise light up the tablecloth, the first Tuesday's cloth, freshly washed, unstained. A few days later, Avery called with an update. Novexus is launching an internal ethics audit. It's not officially about Tamsin yet, but it will be. What happens to Ethan? Depends on how loud her fall gets. If she drags him down, we have everything we need to ensure you're protected. I leaned back, exhaling. Good. I don't want to ruin him, Avery. I just want to stop being collateral damage. She paused. That's exactly why you'll win. By then, my nights had grown peaceful. I'd read before bed again, something I hadn't done since before the affair. Fiction felt different now. I no longer envied happy endings. I respected the characters who rebuilt quietly. One night, as I closed a novel, I caught sight of Ethan in the hallway, mirror thin, pale, eyes sunken. The man who once filled every room now looked like someone's unfinished thought. For the first time, I didn't hate him. I just pitied him. And that, I realized, was freedom's first taste. Spring crept in slowly. The tulips bloomed. The air smelled new. My house, our house, felt larger, like it had been holding its breath. I stood at the window with my coffee and whispered, "You did it. Not to Ethan. To me." Because somewhere between evidence folders and morning rituals, I'd reclaimed more than safety. I'd reclaimed self. He thought betrayal would break me. He forgot women like me don't break. We repurpose. And that's the most dangerous kind of recovery there is. The thing about revenge, real revenge, is that it doesn't explode. It echoes. By early May, the echo had started. Small things first. Ethan's car sat in the driveway longer. His mornings stretched slower. The confidence he used to wear like cologne was fading, replaced by something nervous, stale. He was unraveling, and I almost felt sorry watching it happen. Almost. It began the week Novexus launched their internal culture reset campaign. Corporate jargon for panic. Tamsin had been unusually quiet, no posts, no updates, no power heels clacking through HQ. Ethan, meanwhile, came home tighter each night. The smell of stress thicker than the bergamot that once gave him away. One evening, he stood in the doorway of the kitchen, the same doorway where he'd once confessed everything, and said, "We need to talk." About what? Tamsin's being investigated. Someone submitted files. They're saying she broke conduct rules. I looked up from my laptop. Wow, must be hard watching karma use your corporate server. He ignored the jab. If she goes down, she'll take everyone with her. I was looped on a few projects. If she names me, I could lose your job? I asked lightly. You mean the one that kept you out late and perfumed in jasmine? He flinched. This isn't funny, Lila. I could lose everything. You already did. He stared at me for a long time, and I could tell he finally understood that the woman sitting across from him wasn't playing anymore. That night, his phone rang 3 times. Tamsin. He didn't answer. The next morning, a new number texted me. Hope you're proud. He's breaking. No signature, but I didn't need one. I deleted it without replying. Weak people lash out when the mirror turns toward them. Still, it rattled me just enough to remind me this game had more than one player. By midweek, the neighborhood had started whispering. Not cruelly, just curiously. Maple Ridge loved gossip disguised as sympathy. Mrs. Delaney dropped by with lemon bars. Rough patch, dear? Earthquake, I said. But the house is still standing, she nodded. I saw him pacing outside last night, phone to his ear shouting, looked, cornered. Maybe he finally found the walls, I said. Then came the call from Avery. Heads up, she said. Ethan's mother's been calling me. She says he's worried about finances and mental health. She's blaming you. I laughed softly. Of course she is. She's also saying you're bleeding him dry. I'm just collecting what's legally mine. Avery exhaled. She's planning to call you. Don't engage. Anything you say can end up in court, even if it's just emotional ammo. Understood. The call came that evening. Lila, his mother began, voice syrupy with guilt. You've always been the mature one. Don't ruin his life over one mistake. One? I repeated. You want me to fax you the receipts? Or just the timestamps? Sweetheart, marriage takes forgiveness. No, Mrs. Ward, I said quietly. It takes honesty. We lost that somewhere between hotel check-ins. She gasped softly, wounded by facts. You've become cold. No, I said. I've become awake. She hung up crying. I didn't. The following day, Ethan tried a different tactic. Pity. He waited outside my office at the library, looking out of place among the shelves. Can we talk? He asked. I sighed. We are talking. He shifted. I messed up. I know that. But this scorched earth thing you're doing, it's cruel. I closed my laptop. Cruel is lying to someone for months. Cruel is making them question their own sanity while you rewrite your calendar around another woman. He winced. I was lost. You were comfortable, I corrected. Now you're just inconvenienced. He swallowed, trying to hold on to some power that wasn't there. I still love you, you know. I smiled thinly. You loved the version of me that didn't have Wi-Fi access and a sister with a law degree. He laughed once, bitter. You're not funny anymore. I wasn't trying to be. He left then, mumbling something about lawyers and settlements. I waited until he was gone before I let myself exhale. That night, Avery sent a short text. He's panicking. Don't reply to anything. He'll self-destruct faster if no one's listening. She was right. Silence is gasoline to guilty men. By Friday, he'd called 8 times in a row. I didn't answer. At 2 a.m., he left a voicemail. You're destroying me. Do you even care? I played it once, then deleted it. Care had an expiration date. His had passed at 11:58 p.m., the night of his confession. Saturday morning, the doorbell rang again. I expected Mrs. Delaney. Instead, it was Nico, holding a tray of coffees. You looked like you could use caffeine therapy, he said, stepping inside. I laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. You have no idea. We sat at the counter, talking about gym schedules and how revenge apparently burned more calories than cardio. Then he asked, You sure you're okay? I'm better than okay. I'm focused. He nodded slowly. You've got that vibe, you know, when someone's almost at the finish line but still worried about tripping. I stirred my coffee. Because the finish line keeps moving. That many problems to a, he smirked. Then move faster. That afternoon, I went for a walk through Maple Ridge. The trees were full again. Kids rode bikes down the hill Ethan used to complain about mowing. The world had the nerve to stay normal. When I came back, Ethan's car was gone. On the kitchen table sat an envelope. Inside, a note. You win. I'm moving out for now. Maybe distance will fix things. No apology. No closure. Just a man trying to frame retreat as maturity. I folded the note neatly, slid it into my Silent Storm binder under documentation is greater than emotional statements. Every lie deserves an index. 2 days later, Tessa from HR called. Off the record, things are escalating. Tamsin's under official review, and someone probably her leaked partial files to deflect. Files that include Ethan? Maybe. I can't confirm. But brace yourself. I thanked her, hung up, and leaned against the counter. The tiles felt cool under my palms. Here it was, the backlash. The point where silence stops being shield and becomes temptation. I wanted to go online, tell the whole world what he did, what she was. I wanted to shout, but I didn't. Instead, I brewed another pot of coffee and whispered my new rule out loud, just to hear it in the air. No yelling, no begging, no exposure without evidence. That mantra had gotten me this far. I wasn't breaking it now. Still, As I watched the steam rise, I felt something shift, a tremor, faint but real. The storm I'd started was circling back, and this time, it wasn't just going to rattle windows, it was coming for the foundations. By the following week, the storm stopped circling, it landed. Ethan had gone quiet for 3 days, which in his world meant plotting. I recognized the pattern. Silence wasn't remorse, it was strategy. The first strike came from social media. A mutual friend texted, "Are you okay?" Saw the post. Tamsin had shared a cryptic story, a black screen with white text. Some people weaponize victimhood when they lose control. No tags, no names, but everyone at Novexus could read between the lines. The post vanished an hour later, but screenshots don't die. By noon, whispers reached the library. A patron asked, "Are you the Lila from Novexus?" With that false sympathy tone, I smiled. "No, I'm the Lila who reads contracts before breakfast." She didn't ask again. That night, Ethan showed up unannounced. Hair messy, shirt wrinkled, desperation bleeding through his calm act. "You need to help me," he said, standing in the doorway. "Strange choice of words," I replied. "Help you fix the mess you made?" "Tamsin's throwing me under the bus. She's saying I coerced her, that I leaked the reports." "Did you?" "No. She told me to do things. I just followed her lead." "So you were complicit," I said. He hesitated. "She said it would protect us both." "Us?" I repeated. "There was never an us. Just you playing employee of the month in her little empire." His jaw tightened. "You think you're better than me now?" "No," I said, "just cleaner." He looked around the house like he still belonged there, then muttered, "You're enjoying this." I shook my head. "Enjoyment implies time. I'm too busy." He took a step closer. "I can't lose my job, Lila. You don't understand what that would do to me." "I do," I said softly. "It would make you accountable." He exhaled hard, left without another word. I locked the door behind him and wrote down every line of the conversation while it was fresh habit, protection, truth insurance. The next morning, Avery called. "He's spiraling. His lawyer reached out, claims you're harassing him with emotional manipulation." I laughed. "Does silence count as harassment now?" "Don't joke," she said. "It means he's scared. Stay quiet. Don't feed it." "I won't." "Good. He'll either self-destruct or run out of moves." But by Thursday, the gossip hit the neighborhood. Mrs. Delaney waved me over to her porch. "People are saying ugly things, dear. That you staged all this to ruin him." I smiled calmly. "People always hate the woman who stops apologizing." She nodded. "If you need witnesses, I still have the footage from my doorbell camera. He's been coming and going at odd hours." That could help. I thanked her. She understood without me saying more. Later that night, I opened my email to find a single message from an unknown address. "Stop before you regret it." No signature, no trace. Probably Ethan. Possibly Tamsin. Either way, I archived it under predictable threats. Friday morning, Nico dropped by again. "You look too calm for someone with a PR war brewing." "Calmness is the one thing they can't fake," I said. He studied me for a second. "You ever think about letting it all out? Just once?" I smiled. "I already did. Into a folder, with timestamps." He laughed, but his eyes said he knew this wasn't about rage anymore. It was about control. By weekend, the situation at Novexus exploded. Tamsin was officially suspended pending investigation. HR had enough to open an ethics case, unauthorized transactions, off-book meetings, PAX 10 trades. Ethan's name was on 3 files. He called that night. "I didn't do it, Lila. She used my credentials." "Then prove it," I said. "I can't." "She wiped everything." "Then you're not innocent. You're sloppy. Do you even care what happens to me?" "Not enough to delete evidence." He went quiet, then whispered, "You're going to regret this when you realize what you've started." I said, "No, Ethan. You started it. I just learned how to finish." And I hung up. The next day, a car idled outside my house for 10 minutes. Gray sedan, tinted windows. When I stepped onto the porch, it sped away. I called Avery. "Probably just nerves," she said. "But I'll file a note with the firm just in case." I nodded, trying not to show the tremor in my hand. Strategy and fear share the same pulse sometimes. That night, I slept with the lights on. Not because I thought he'd come back, but because I refused to let the dark feel like his territory. Days passed. The noise grew louder, whispers, posts, half-truths, but I stayed silent. Online, in public, even with friends. Every rumor bounced off me like static. Then, one morning, Avery forwarded a statement. "Internal hearing at Novexus Tuesday, 10 a.m. Attendance, HR, legal, involved parties." The showdown was official. Ethan texted the night before. "You don't have to come. This isn't your fight." I typed back. "Oh, it is. You just forgot which side I'm on." Tuesday morning arrived gray and heavy. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer. No makeup armor, just composure. The reflection stared back steady, detached. When I arrived at Novexus, the air felt electric. Employees pretended to work, but everyone was listening. Through the glass wall, I saw Ethan pacing, Tamsin sitting still, HR whispering to counsel. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. Avery was already inside representing my interests. I waited in the hallway, calm, deliberate, coffee in hand. At 10:37, the door opened. Ethan stormed out first, eyes wild. "You happy now?" he snapped. "They're suspending me pending review. You ruined me." I held his gaze. "No, Ethan. You ruined yourself the second you thought I'd stay quiet." He stepped closer. "You don't get to act innocent." "I'm not acting," I said. "And I'm not innocent. I'm informed." He blinked, furious but cornered. "You can't survive on spite forever." I smiled, calm as glass. "Watch me." He stared for a moment, then spat. "You're a monster." "No," I whispered. "I'm your mirror." He froze. For a second, there was nothing but the hum of the lights and the click of a printer down the hall. Then Avery appeared beside me. "It's done," she said. "They'll announce the investigation publicly next week." Ethan looked between us, realization dawning that his version of the story was finished. As he turned to leave, he muttered, "You'll regret this." I called after him quietly. "Hindsight's your specialty, Ethan. I'm more of a future person." He didn't answer. When the elevator doors closed behind him, Avery exhaled. "That," she said, "felt like the universe closing a tab." I smiled faintly. "Not yet." That was just the loading screen. It's strange how judgment days don't come with thunder. They come with fluorescent lights. Tuesday, 9:42 a.m. The Novexus lobby smelled like new carpet and nerves. I stood by the glass wall outside the auditorium, watching employees file in heads low, whispers sharp. The company had called it a culture reset town hall. But everyone knew what it really was. A controlled burn. Tamsin Crowell was sitting front row, posture immaculate, smile taut. The kind of smile that said she'd spent all night rehearsing denial. Ethan sat 3 chairs behind her, looking smaller than I remembered, suit wrinkled, tie crooked, eyes flicking toward every phone that buzzed. I didn't plan to speak. Avery insisted on that. "You've said enough in paper and proof," she told me. "Today, presence will say the rest." So I stood still, a ghost in daylight, holding a paper cup of coffee and watching my husband's career disintegrate in real time. The CEO, Miriam Caldwell, took the stage precisely at 10. Short, sharp, commanding. The kind of woman who didn't need a microphone to hold attention. "Good morning," she began. "Novexus exists on trust, internal, external, ethical. In recent weeks, that trust has been tested. Today is about accountability." The room stilled. Not a cough, not a shuffle, just tension pretending to breathe. I saw Tamsin's jaw tighten. Ethan's hand rubbed the back of his neck, a tell I'd learned in 17 years it meant panic was setting in. Miriam continued, "We've completed an internal review of certain practices within the growth division. The findings are disappointing." She clicked her remote. The screen behind her filled with graphs, numbers, dates, unauthorized expenditures, duplicate invoices, misuse of resources. Tamsin's name appeared in the corner of one slide, then Ethan's, smaller, as approving officer. A murmur rippled through the room, the kind that feeds gossip for months. Ethan shifted in his seat, face draining. Tamsin didn't move. Miriam went on, voice steady as glass. "Effective immediately. Miss Crowell is terminated for cause pending regulatory review. Mr. Ward is suspended until further notice, while we complete compliance verification." The silence that followed was surgical. I didn't flinch. Ethan turned slightly, eyes scanning the crowd until they found me through the glass. For one brief second, everything fell away: the job, the lies, the noise. Just him and me, the distance between us more permanent than divorce papers could ever make it. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. Maybe please, maybe why. I didn't move. Then Avery appeared beside me, clipboard in hand, whispering, "It's done. Let's go." But I didn't. Not yet. As people began leaving, voices filled the hall, whispers, clicks of heels, fragments of relief. I stayed where I was, eyes still locked on Ethan as he stood, dazed. Tamsin brushed past him without looking back, her perfume expensive, identical to that night, trailing like a ghost. Ethan followed her into the corridor, expression raw. I waited a few beats, then walked after them. Avery called softly, "Lila, don't." I went anyway. Some stories end in court. Ours needed to end in the open air. The parking garage under Novexus was dim, lit by sodium lamps that hummed like broken bees. The air smelled of metal, oil, and endings. I found them near the elevators, Tamsin with her phone raised, Ethan trying to reason, to salvage something invisible. "Don't call me again," she snapped. "We're done." "You used me," he shouted, voice echoing off concrete. "You said we were in this together," she scoffed. "You believed that? You were convenient, Ethan. Disposable. The perfect decoy." He stepped back, like the words were physical. "You said you loved me." I said what worked. I didn't interrupt. Not yet. Tamsin spotted me first. Her lips curled. "Of course. The wife. Ex-wife," I corrected, stepping into the light. Ethan turned, startled. "Lila, what are you doing here?" Watching the audit complete itself, Tamsin's smile turned thin. "You think you've won something?" "No," I said. "Just balance." She laughed. "Balance? You cost me everything. My job, my reputation. You cost yourself those," I said evenly. "You used your power to break people and called it leadership. That's not ambition. That's rot." Her jaw tightened. "You don't get to moralize, sweetheart. You're just bitter because your husband liked someone with ambition." "Ambition isn't sleeping upward," I said. "It's surviving downward and still walking out clean." Ethan muttered. "Lila, stop." "No," Tamsin cut in, voice rising. "Let her have her movie moment." I met her eyes. "Movie moments end, investigations don't." Her smirk faltered. Ethan looked between us, panic clawing his voice. "You both need to calm down." "Calm?" I asked. "You're lucky calm is all you got from me." Tamsin took a step forward, lips curling. "You really think anyone's going to believe you didn't engineer this? You look calculated, cold. People will see through it." "Maybe," I said, "but I have one advantage you never will: documentation." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I turned to leave, but Ethan's voice stopped me. "Is this what you wanted? To humiliate me?" I faced him. "No. I wanted honesty, but you kept giving me performance reviews instead." He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman speaking. In a way, he didn't. The elevator doors opened behind me with a soft ding. Before stepping inside, I said quietly, "You once told me regret was weakness. I hope you're strong enough to keep that promise." The doors closed, sealing the silence around them. When I reached the street, the sky had started to drizzle a soft, cold rain that made everything look reflective, temporary. Avery waited by her car, umbrella open. "You're soaked," she said. "I'm fine. I told you not to follow him." "I didn't follow him," I said, watching the rain streak the windshield. "I finished something." Avery sighed. "You always have to write the last line, huh?" "Somebody has to," I said. That night, I sat in my kitchen, the same table where it all began. The candles were gone, replaced by a single lamp and an open notebook. I replayed the day in my head, the lights, the murmurs, the look on his face. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like closing a file that had stayed open too long. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Inside, I wrote a line in my notebook. "Silence isn't surrender. It's strategy, waiting for an audience." Then I closed it and exhaled. For the first time, I felt something close to peace. Not joy, just the absence of noise. But peace doesn't last long when people panic. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. "Hello?" Heavy breathing. Then Ethan's voice, low and ragged. "You were right about her. She was using me. But she's not done. She's saying I leaked the trades. They're calling it insider information. I could lose everything." "You already did," I said. "Lila, please. Why call me now?" "Because you're the only one who knows how to clean this up." I almost laughed. "You want me to save you?" He hesitated. "You're good at fixing things. I'm better at ending them." He fell silent, then, quietly, "You hate me." "No," I said. "I remember you." "That's worse." He hung up. The next morning, the news broke. Novexus VP under federal review for insider trading allegations. Subhead: Unidentified subordinate, possibly complicit. My coffee went cold before I even took a sip. Within an hour, my phone was full texts, calls, reporters. I didn't answer. Avery handled statements. I handled silence. At noon, the CEO, Miriam Caldwell, called directly. "Lila, I wanted you to hear from me first. You're not mentioned in any document, but I know what this means for you personally. If there's anything you need, just the truth, I said. She paused. Then you'll get it. I don't tolerate corruption. Not in my house. Her tone made me believe her. After the call, I sat for a long time, the sound of rain tapping the window like distant applause. It wasn't victory, it was vindication. Quieter and sharper. Later that day, I found myself driving no plan, just motion. The wipers swept rhythmically, a metronome for thoughts I didn't want to keep. Without meaning to, I ended up outside Novexus again. The parking lot was nearly empty now, just security cars and puddles. I parked under the same sodium lamp from last night and looked up at the building glass, steel, ambition. How many people had worshipped their jobs here, traded peace for prestige? I thought about Tamsin, about Ethan, about how power makes people mistake recklessness for confidence. And then I thought about myself, the woman who'd once sat at this man's table, eating cold lasagna while pretending marriage still had flavor. The rain blurred the windshield until the whole world looked soft, erased. And for a moment, I whispered to the reflection staring back at me. You did it. You didn't explode. You evolved. Rain has a way of cleaning what fire can't. By the time I pulled into my driveway that night, the downpour had turned from gentle to relentless, each drop like a small, precise metronome on my windshield. It matched my heartbeat. Steady, deliberate, too calm for what was coming. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wet wood and coffee grounds, the same house where the lasagna had gone cold, where silence had turned into armor. I slipped off my shoes, hung up my coat, and for the first time in months, felt the weight of exhaustion, not fear, not adrenaline, just tiredness carved deep into bone. That peace lasted 6 minutes. A car door slammed outside. Then another. Voices. Low, male, agitated. I walked to the front window and parted the curtain. Ethan's car was parked crooked across my lawn, headlights cutting through rain. He was standing beside it, drenched, pacing. Another man, someone I didn't recognize, waited by the passenger door. Avery's voice echoed in my head. He'll self-destruct faster if no one's listening. Well, I was about to listen just long enough to end it. I opened the door. What the hell are you doing here? He turned toward me, water streaming down his face. We need to talk. You've said that line too many times, Ethan. It's lost meaning. This isn't about us, he snapped. It's about survival. I crossed my arms. Yours, I assume. They're saying I helped move insider data, that I was her runner. You know it's not true, do I? I asked quietly. Because every lie you told me came dressed like the truth. He took a step closer, shoes sinking into the muddy grass. You don't get it, she's framing me. She already fed them my emails. I'm done if this sticks. Then tell the truth, I said. For once, I can't. I don't have proof. That's not new territory for you. He exhaled hard, jaw twitching. You think this is funny? No, I said. But it's poetic. The stranger by his car spoke up. Mr. Ward, we should go. They'll be here any minute. Ethan glared back. Give me a second. Then to me. You could help me, Lila. You have access, Avery, her sister's firm, the HR files. You could clear me. I laughed once, sharp. After 17 ignored calls, you think I'm your lifeline? You burned that bridge, then tried to sell the ashes. Please, he said, voice cracking. I don't have anyone else. I looked at him, really looked. The man who once couldn't go a day without controlling every detail now looked like a boy standing in the rain, stripped of illusions. And still, pity is a dangerous door. I refused to open it. Go home, Ethan. I don't have one, he whispered. The words hung there, soaked and heavy. I could have said something soft, something human. But mercy had to have boundaries. You made that choice, I said. You picked the hotel over the home. Now you get to live in the vacancy you created. He took another step forward, close enough that I could see how red his eyes were. You're enjoying this. No, I'm enduring it. That's the difference between us. He shook his head, water flying. You always thought you were better. I never needed to be better, Ethan. Just honest. The stranger's phone buzzed. He checked it, nodded once. We really have to go. Ethan hesitated, staring at me one last time. They'll believe whatever story you feed them. You've always been the better storyteller. Funny, I said. That's what truth does, it tells itself. He clenched his jaw, turned toward the car, and slammed the door so hard the sound echoed down the block. As they pulled away, I caught my reflection in the rain-streaked window, calm, unbroken, unrecognizable from the woman I'd been. By morning, the headlines were worse. Crowell, an associate implicated in Pax 10 leak. Unconfirmed sources link data transfers to former marketing director Ethan Ward. Every outlet used the same photo: Ethan and Tamsin shaking hands at a Novexus event, smiling too wide, unaware they were posing for evidence. At 9:30, Avery called. He's gone dark. His lawyer says he's out of reach. Probably hiding. Hiding from what? The investigation, the press, himself, take your pick. And Tamsin? Her attorney just released a statement. Miss Crowell acted independently and in good faith. Translation: she's burying him to save herself. I stared out the kitchen window, watching the rain start again. She'll drag him down anyway. People like her always do. Are you okay? Avery asked. Define okay. Breathing, eating, not planning arson. 2 out of 3. She laughed softly. The hearing's tomorrow morning. Internal reviews going federal. You should stay clear. I intend to, I said. But if he shows up again, call me, she finished. Or better, call Lucas Crowell. He's turning state witness. That name hit harder than expected. Lucas? Apparently, Tamsin's husband had receipts. Big ones. Bank logs, wire transfers, hotel bills, everything. He's done covering for her. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The universe has a sense of symmetry. Later that day, I went back to the library. The air smelled like dust and calm. The sound of pages turning was the only heartbeat I needed. But calm never lasts. At 3:14, the front door banged open. Ethan, soaked again, wild-eyed, clutching a folder to his chest. Patrons turned, startled. He scanned the room until he saw me. Lila, he called, voice too loud for a public place. Not here, I said quietly. He ignored me, striding up to the counter. They're after me. You have to listen. I kept my tone even. You need to leave. He slapped the folder down, papers spilling across the counter: emails, ride-share logs, expense sheets, his handwriting all over them. Proof. She did it. Tamsin. She used my name for everything. I gathered the papers slowly. Why bring this to me? Because you're the only person who knows I didn't start this. Didn't start it? I said. You started it the night you told me you didn't regret anything. His voice broke. I didn't know what she was capable of. That's what all men say after the fire catches their sleeves. He slammed his hand down. I'm trying to fix it. The sound made a kid at the reading table jump. I glanced around, parents whispering, eyes darting. The librarian in me wanted to shush him. The ex-wife in me wanted to call security. Ethan, I said softly, you're scaring people. Leave, now. He looked around, realized where he was, and stepped back. I didn't mean to. I know, I said. You never do. He froze, breathing hard. You're really not going to help me? No. He stared at me for a long moment, something dark flickering behind his eyes. Then he turned, stormed out, and the door slammed so hard it rattled the window panes. I picked up the papers he'd left, stacked them neatly, and locked them in my drawer. Evidence was evidence, even from a ghost. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rain again. Always rain. At 2 a.m., I heard footsteps outside. Soft, hesitant. Then the faint chime of my doorbell camera. Mrs. Delaney's voice came through the speaker, worried, whispering, Lila, dear, you might want to check your driveway. There's someone sitting out there. My heart jumped. I pulled up the feed on my phone. Ethan, in his car, engine off, head down on the steering wheel. For a long time, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he lifted his head, staring straight into the camera. Help me, he mouthed. I didn't move. Didn't answer. After 10 minutes, he drove away. I watched the taillights vanish into the rain until there was nothing left but the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. By dawn, my decision was made. If this was going to end, it had to end publicly, on record, on paper, where emotion couldn't rewrite it later. I called Avery. Tomorrow, I want to be in the hearing room, not hidden in the hall. In the room. Are you sure? Yes, she sighed. Then dress like you've already won. The next day, Novexus looked like a courthouse. Security guards at every door, HR stationed with folders thick as sins, cameras, journalists, murmurs. Inside, the air felt heavy like a storm trapped behind glass. Tamsin sat at one end of the long conference table, flanked by lawyers in dark suits. Ethan sat opposite her, alone. His tie was missing. His eyes were bloodshot. I entered quietly, took a seat in the back. Miriam Caldwell nodded at me once, respectful, then began. This is an internal compliance hearing regarding the misuse of confidential data under the PAX 10 project. All statements are recorded. Tamsin's lawyer spoke first, smooth and confident. My client denies any wrongdoing. She was misled by subordinate actions outside her control. Ethan barked a bitter laugh. Subordinate actions? You planned every step. Mr. Ward, Miriam said sharply. You'll have your turn. He leaned forward, voice shaking. She used my access, my login, my card. She told me it was a confidential transfer. Tamsin smiled faintly. Poor Ethan. Always following orders, never reading fine print. He slammed his fist lightly on the table. You told me. I told you to think for once, she snapped. But that's never been your strength. The room went still. I could feel every pair of eyes flick between them, predator and prey, both bleeding. Ethan's voice dropped, cold. You're lying. Her smirk sharpened. Prove it. He opened the folder he'd brought, the same one from the library, and slid it across the table. These are the receipts, your emails, your notes. Her lawyer flipped through them, frowned. These aren't originals. They're copies, Ethan said. I kept the originals safe. Miriam interjected. Mr. Ward, where are those originals now? He hesitated. With someone I trust. Tamsin laughed softly. Oh, please. The only person you ever trusted is sitting behind you, judging you. Every head turned toward me. The air shifted. Ethan met my eyes. Tell them, Lila. Tell them you have them. I stayed silent. Tamsin tilted her head. You really are her little project, aren't you? She turned your guilt into her redemption arc. Ethan's hands shook. Stop talking. You should have stayed in marketing, not espionage. Stop talking, he shouted, standing now. Security moved closer. Miriam's voice cut through like a knife. Enough. This ends here. We'll verify the evidence chain independently. Ethan's chest heaved. You'll see I'm right. Miriam nodded slowly. Maybe. But right doesn't erase reckless. The room stayed silent long enough for the air to feel thick. Then Miriam added, calm and final. This session is adjourned. As everyone began to file out, Tamsin stood, smoothing her blazer. Enjoy the sympathy while it lasts, Ethan. It's the only currency you have left. He didn't answer. But when his eyes met mine, there was no pride left. Just a hollow echo of a man who'd finally seen the ceiling cave in. The hallway outside the hearing room smelled of metal and sweat, the aftermath of too many truths told too fast. People passed in hushed clusters, voices like static, HR, lawyers, assistants, all pretending the morning hadn't just turned the company inside out. I stayed seated on the bench against the wall, coat folded in my lap. I could still hear the echo of Miriam's final words, the scrape of chairs, Ethan's breathing. He hadn't looked back, as security escorted him out. Tamsin had walked the opposite way, flanked by attorneys who whispered damage control. The storm was over. But storms always leave puddles, places where reflections linger too long. Avery appeared beside me, holding 2 coffees. You okay? I took one, nodding. He's done, isn't he? Legally? Not yet. Emotionally? Completely. Good. She sat down. You know, most people would have celebrated. You just look emptied. I didn't win, I said. I just stopped losing. Avery studied me. You going to talk to him? Outside, I said. For closure. She sighed. Make it quick. He's unstable. Outside, the sky had turned that flat silver before rain. The wind carried the smell of ozone and wet pavement. Ethan stood by the loading dock, shoulders slumped, tie gone, the last of his confidence leaking out like oil under a car. He looked up as I approached. You didn't have to come. I didn't, I said. I chose to. He gave a bitter laugh. Of course. Always in control. I learned from the best. He rubbed his face. They're going to ruin me. No, Ethan. You did that yourself. He looked at me, eyes bloodshot. I thought you'd at least enjoy seeing me crash. I don't enjoy destruction, I said. Just completion. He exhaled, staring at the horizon. You ever think about how we got here? Every night, I said. Then I stopped. Because replaying pain doesn't make it mean less. He nodded slowly. I was wrong. About what? Thinking power would keep me safe. It just made me careless. That's what power does, I said. It gives you amnesia until the consequences show up with receipts. He half smiled. Still sharp. Still done, I replied. He laughed, but it broke halfway through. You know, I keep thinking about that night, the lasagna, the calls. I didn't think it would matter that much. It didn't, I said. Until it did. He leaned against the railing, staring at the wet asphalt below. What happens now? For you? I asked. You'll testify. Maybe cooperate. Maybe disappear for a while. People like you always land somewhere less shiny, more humble. And you? I'll breathe. He swallowed. That simple? It's all I wanted from the start. Rain started again, small, steady drops tapping the metal rail between us. He looked up, squinting through it. You think they'll believe I was tricked? I think they'll believe you were greedy, I said, and greed looks like consent in every file. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't understand, I understand perfectly. You were flattered, flamed, then framed. Classic arc. Damn it, Lila, this isn't a script. No, I said softly. It's a rerun. He went still. The rain thickened, running down his face like it was doing the crying for him. I never meant to hurt you, he said finally. I tilted my head. That's what makes it worse. Intent doesn't erase damage. It just decorates it. He looked at me like he wanted to say something else, but nothing came. So I said it for him. You once told me regret was weakness. I think about that every time I don't feel sorry for you. His breath hitched. You really hate me, don't you? No, I said. Hate's still an investment. I'm divested. He laughed quietly. Always with the metaphors. Comes with being married to a marketing director. He smiled faintly, then looked down. I don't know how to fix this. You don't, I said. You just survive it. If you're lucky, you learn something. He nodded slowly. And what did you learn? That silence is stronger than screaming. That dignity outlasts gossip. That people who erase you end up haunted by the outline you leave behind. He stared at me for a long time, then whispered, You really are unrecognizable. That's the point. A black sedan pulled up nearby Avery, waiting. She didn't honk, just waited with headlights on, her silhouette steady behind the wheel. Ethan looked at it, then back at me. Guess that's my cue. Yeah. He stepped closer, close enough for me to smell the faint trace of rain and cheap cologne trying to mask failure. For what it's worth, he said, I hope you're happy. I met his eyes. Happiness was never the goal. Freedom was. He nodded once, defeated. Goodbye, Lila. I stepped back, letting the distance widen again. Goodbye, Ethan. He turned and walked away, his figure shrinking against the gray horizon until he was just another shadow between streetlights. I stood there until he disappeared completely. When I got into the car, Avery glanced over. You good? Better than he is. She drove in silence for a while before asking, Do you ever feel guilty? For what? For being right. I looked out the window at the city, blurring past. Being right doesn't feel good. It just stops the bleeding. We didn't speak again for the rest of the drive. That evening, I walked into the house and went straight to the kitchen. The air was warm, quiet. The same table, same silver china, same ticking clock, but it no longer echoed. I set down my keys, brewed coffee, 2 sugars, same as always. But when I reached for the second cup, I stopped. Only one now. I sat with it, steam curling in front of me like breath I hadn't exhaled for years. Through the window, the rain shimmered under the streetlight, soft and endless. I thought about what Avery had said about being right, about the thin line between justice and obsession, and I realized something simple, something almost disappointing. There was no grand victory, no cinematic applause, just space. And maybe that was the point. A few hours later, my phone buzzed unknown number. I almost ignored it, then picked up. A male voice, calm, formal. Mrs. Monroe? This is Dr. Lucas Crowell. My pulse jumped. Lucas, I didn't expect. I wanted to thank you, he said, for cooperating quietly, for letting the facts breathe instead of turning it into spectacle. I didn't do it for thanks. I know. But you should hear this. The investigation confirms what you suspected. Ethan wasn't just cheating. He was transferring data for Tamsin. Unknowingly. Maybe, but he signed off on everything. My hand tightened around the phone. So he's done. Yes, Lucas said. They'll both face consequences. But you're clear. The line went quiet for a moment. Then he added, It's strange. Sometimes the people who burn us are the ones who taught us where the fire exits are. I smiled faintly. You sound like someone who's been through one. I have, he said, and I think you'll like knowing she's gone. Tamsin left the city. No forwarding address. Good, I said. Cities deserve their oxygen back. He chuckled softly. If you ever need a clean start, you've earned it. Maybe someday, I said. Right now, I just want quiet. Then I wish you peace, he said, and hung up. Peace. The word lingered. I set the phone down and looked around the room. Same walls, same light, but nothing felt heavy anymore. The lasagna dish, the candles, the wine glasses, they'd all been washed, boxed, stored. No ghosts left, just furniture. I walked to the window, watching the last of the rain fade to mist. The street was empty, except for the faint reflection of headlights turning the corner, a car driving away into the dark. And I realized something I hadn't before. Sometimes closure isn't the slam of a door or the roar of revenge. Sometimes it's the soft click of peace, fitting perfectly into place. As I turned off the kitchen light, I whispered the line that had been forming in my head since that first night. I don't owe you my panic anymore. The words didn't echo, they landed. Solid. Final. I stood there a moment longer, breathing in the quiet. Then I smiled small, sure, private, and walked upstairs. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. 3 days after the hearing, the world moved on, but the truth didn't. Headlines rotated, hashtags cooled, people went back to pretending morality depended on convenience. Novexus issued a sterile press release about internal restructuring, and the city forgot 2 names it had whispered about for weeks. Ethan Ward and Tamsin Crowell. But I hadn't forgotten. Because sometimes, justice doesn't shout, it waits for the paperwork to settle. On Friday morning, I opened an anonymous envelope left at my office door. No return address, no handwriting, just a USB drive and a sticky note with one word, checkmate. My first thought was Avery, but the pen stroke was too neat, too measured. Not hers. I locked my office door, closed the blinds, and plugged the drive in. Folders loaded instantly. Packs 10 transactions, meeting logs, personal messages, each time-stamped, cross-referenced, and ugly. It wasn't just Tamsin. Ethan was there too, his digital fingerprints on every file. Transfers authorized under his login. Encrypted with his secondary key. He hadn't been tricked. He'd been chosen. Because he was reckless enough to obey without understanding, and arrogant enough to think no one would trace it back. My stomach turned cold. The emails were clinical, transactional. Move the data before board review. Keep Monroe quiet until cycle ends. That last line froze me. Keep Monroe quiet. Not a metaphor. A directive. They'd discussed me. My silence. My potential to interfere. Ethan had written back. She won't suspect. She never looks at what's behind the curtain. I did now. I printed everything. 112 pages of betrayal, collusion, proof. The sound of the printer chewing through evidence was the only sound in the room. I placed the stack in a plain folder and labeled it Final. Then I called Avery. She answered on the second ring. Please tell me you're not about to do something cinematic. Too late, I said. The film's already developed. Lila, I have what we needed. Full data trail. Ethan wasn't collateral, he was a co-signer. Silence. Then, quietly. Are you sure? I'm staring at his login history. Avery exhaled hard. Send it to me encrypted. Don't confront him yourself. I wasn't planning to. Good. Because this is nuclear. I smiled faintly. Nuclear's just efficient. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where truth had first detonated, and reread every email. The lines blurred between business and betrayal until I couldn't tell where one ended. It wasn't even about Tamsin anymore. It was about Ethan's need to be admired, to be significant in someone's orbit, even if it meant detonating his own. He'd once told me he wanted to leave a mark. He had. Just not the kind you frame. I closed the folder and stared at the candle stub I'd never thrown away. Wax hardened mid-drip, caught between melting and freezing, a perfect metaphor for him. For us. Then I stood, walked to the window, and called the number Avery had given me weeks ago, Lucas Crowell. He answered on the first ring. This is Dr. Crowell. Lucas, it's Lila Monroe. Pause. Then, I wondered when you'd call. I think I have something you'll want to see. I assume it's about PAX 10. Assume correctly. When can you meet? Tomorrow morning. Neutral ground. He hesitated. There's a diner near Harbor Road. 9 a.m. I'll be there. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the air clear but heavy, like the world had exhaled too much and didn't know what to do next. The diner was nearly empty. Lucas was already there, sitting in a booth, tie loosened, eyes tired but sharp. He looked like a man who'd finally stopped pretending to save a marriage and started saving himself. Dr. Crowell, I said, sliding into the seat opposite him. Please, Lucas. He nodded at the folder in my hands. That the storm? Category 5, I said. He opened it, scanning page after page, face unreadable. When he reached the email headers, his jaw tightened. She used his credentials for months, claimed it was delegation. He thought it made him important. He thought wrong, I said. Lucas closed the folder carefully, like it might bite. You want to leak this? No. I want it processed legally, cleanly. No drama, no headlines. Just correction. He studied me. That's colder than revenge. It lasts longer. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You know what I admire about you, Lila? You don't weaponize emotion. You refine it. Practice, I said. He leaned back. I can get this to the Compliance Division and Federal Council. Quietly. But once it's in motion, it doesn't stop. Good, I said. Neither do I. When I left the diner, the sky was pale blue, almost gentle. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel like it was hiding something. As I walked to my car, I felt no triumph, just closure stretching itself into calm. I thought about what would happen next. Investigations, audits, hearings. Ethan facing the truth he'd built with his own hands. And for once, I didn't need to see it. Some endings don't need witnesses, they just need signatures. The next 7 days passed like a long inhale that never quite exhaled. No calls from Ethan. No more questions from reporters. Just silence, a heavy, waiting kind of silence that felt like the eye of a storm holding its breath. Then, on the 8th morning, Avery called. You sitting down? I'm always sitting when justice calls, I said. They verified everything, she said. Every document, every transfer. Ethan wasn't duped, he approved every transaction. Tamsin orchestrated it, yes, but he signed. That makes him complicit. I didn't answer. I just stared at the steam rising from my coffee. They'll both face criminal proceedings, she continued. Lucas's statement corroborates your file. You're cleared completely. The words landed, but they didn't feel triumphant. More like a sound too long delayed. Lila, she said softly. You did it. You closed the circle. No, I said. I just finished the math. A pause. Then Avery added. He's already reached out to his lawyer about a plea. The only thing he asked for was that your name stay out of it. Funny, I murmured. That's the first decent thing he's done in years. That afternoon, a courier arrived at my door. A small box, no return address, just my name typed neatly on the label. Inside, a set of silver china plates our wedding china. The same set we'd once displayed in a glass cabinet like proof of permanence. Every plate was intact, polished, perfect. Except one. The largest plate had a hairline crack running across its center, thin as a scar. Beneath it, a note in Ethan's handwriting. I'm sorry. For everything I broke. No signature. No return address. Just guilt mailed like a relic. I set the plate on the counter, staring at the crack. It caught the light exactly like the night he confessed one fracture, reflecting 1,000 tiny truths. Then I placed it gently in a cardboard box marked Donate. Some ghosts deserve storage, others deserve release. 2 days later, I got another call, this time from Lucas. His voice was calm, almost clinical. It's done, he said. The department's taking over the investigation. Ethan gave a full statement this morning. What did he say? That he let ambition make him stupid. That he lost more than he ever intended. I closed my eyes. Sounds like honesty finally showed up to work. Lucas hesitated. He also said something about you. That you never raised your voice once. That you scared him more by staying calm. I smiled faintly. Fear has better acoustics in silence. He chuckled softly. I'll remember that. Good, I said. It's a useful rule. He paused before adding, You'll see his name in the papers soon. Just remember, you didn't destroy him. You revealed him. After the call, I stood at the window for a long time, watching the afternoon light shift across the floorboards. Revelation, not revenge. That distinction mattered now. That weekend, I packed up what was left of the past. The framed wedding photo gone. The his and hers mugs donated. The first Tuesday tablecloth washed, folded, tucked into a new box marked Keep. It wasn't sentimentality. It was chronology. Proof that I'd survived every chapter. As I worked, I found one last envelope hidden in the back of a drawer, unopened mail from weeks ago, addressed in familiar handwriting. Lila Monroe, Maple Ridge Library. Inside was a check Ethan's name on it, small amount, postmarked right before the scandal broke. In the memo line, just 2 words, spousal support. No message, no plea. Just responsibility late, but real. I slipped it into a folder marked records and felt something loosen in my chest. He hadn't changed, but he'd acknowledged the wreckage, and that, in its own small way, was enough. On Sunday morning, I drove to the local auction house and carried in the silver china set. The clerk recognized me. "Beautiful pieces," she said. "Hard to part with, I imagine." "Not really," I replied. "They never survived the meals that mattered." She smiled politely, tagging the box. "Proceeds go to charity?" "Yes," I said. "To the library's Children's Reading Fund." The irony wasn't lost on me, turning the symbols of a broken marriage into stories for kids who might someday learn that honesty isn't optional. As I left, I didn't look back. That night, I sat by the window with a single cup of coffee, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops. No phone, no noise, just stillness. The reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, older, calmer, more deliberate, and I realized something I hadn't before. I didn't want revenge. I wanted proportion. To set things right without burning what was left. Maybe that was the real counterstrike, the refusal to let bitterness write the ending. 2 weeks later, the final report went public. Headlines scrolled. "Novexus scandal concludes with 2 guilty pleas. Anonymous whistleblower, credited with preserving employee ethics." I read it once, folded the paper, and slid it into a drawer. No need to frame it. The victory was internal, not decorative. When the news cycle finally moved on, I found myself back in the same kitchen where everything had begun. But this time, there was no lasagna, no ticking clock loud enough to drown regret. Just a new candle, steady, unscented, unremarkable. I poured coffee into my favorite white mug, added 2 sugars, stirred slowly. Across the table, the second mug sat empty. Sunlight touched its rim, gentle and forgiving. I thought about calling Avery, about telling her how strangely peaceful everything felt, but I didn't. Some stories don't need narration once they've ended. I lifted the cup, took a sip, and whispered into the quiet, "Checkmate." Then I smiled, not the bitter kind, not the tired kind, just the kind that comes when you finally understand that survival can be elegant too. Outside, the world kept moving. Inside, I finally stayed still. 6 months later, the world had rearranged itself into something almost ordinary. The headlines had faded, the hearings had closed, and the names that once dominated office gossip now existed only as legal footnotes. Novexus was rebuilding its culture. Tamsin was negotiating fines through her attorneys. Ethan, last I heard, was working part-time at a small digital agency near Tacoma. And me? I'd stopped counting the days since it all ended. Because ending implies silence. But what came after was a new rhythm, quiet but alive. I started running again. Not from anything, but toward mornings that smelled like possibility instead of panic. The library had promoted me to regional director, which meant less shelving, more decisions, and for the first time, I liked being the one who decided. Avery joked that I'd turned spreadsheets into self-care. She wasn't wrong. I planned budgets the way I once planned, survival precise, efficient, almost soothing. My team surprised me with a small plaque on my first day. For the woman who read between the lines. I laughed until I almost cried. Tuesday nights became something new. The first Tuesday dinners I once hosted for a man who didn't show had evolved into a tradition of their own. The same table, but filled with mismatched chairs and louder laughter. Nico was usually there, bringing wine and sarcasm. Mrs. Delaney came too, still sharp as a dagger in pearls. Sometimes even Lucas joined, though always quietly, never overstepping, always bringing a bottle of something dry and good. It wasn't romance. It was restoration. We'd toast to strange things, court settlements, clean audits, canceled debts, to quiet triumphs that never made headlines. And every time, before the meal began, someone would raise a glass and say, "To First Tuesdays," and I'd smile because it no longer meant holding on. It meant starting again. One afternoon, I visited the charity auction that had sold our old silver china. The proceeds plaque hung near the children's reading room, funded by an anonymous donor, because stories deserve second chances. I traced the engraving with my fingertip, feeling something like pride. The silver had found a better home, one that didn't need perfection to be valuable. My house had changed too. The walls no longer echoed. The rooms felt full, not of people, but of permission. I painted the kitchen pale sage, replaced the old ticking clock, and bought a new coffee maker that brewed exactly 1 cup. Every morning, sunlight fell across the table, catching the faint scratches where our wedding china once sat. I didn't sand them out. They were proof of history imperfections turned into texture. I'd learned to live with evidence instead of erasing it. Sometimes Ethan crossed my mind not as the villain of a story, but as a character whose arc had simply closed. Avery once asked if I'd ever forgive him. I told her forgiveness wasn't the point. Accountability was. Forgiveness is an act of grace. Accountability is an act of respect for yourself, for the truth, for the people who watched you survive. So no, I hadn't forgiven him. But I'd stopped needing to. That was its own kind of freedom. One evening in May, the library hosted a community gala at a converted greenhouse downtown. The glass ceiling reflected strings of golden lights, and for a moment, the whole place glowed like bottled sunlight. As I stood near the podium, Avery leaned in and whispered, "You realize you're the story now, right? Everyone here's talking about you." "Then let them," I said. "At least it's a better story than before." She grinned. "You really turned survival into branding." Actually, I prefer evolution. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't talk about betrayal or justice. I talked about resilience, the quiet kind that doesn't trend but transforms. I told them that rebuilding isn't about erasing the cracks. It's about learning where the light gets in. When the applause came, it felt warm but distant because I wasn't performing anymore. I was just present. After the event, I walked outside into the evening air. The city smelled like rain again. The good kind, the kind that washes rather than warns. Nico called after me from the steps. "You coming to the after party?" I shook my head. I already had my celebration. He smiled. "Lasagna again?" "Maybe. This time with enough oregano." He laughed, and I walked toward my car, heels tapping against the pavement like punctuation marks in a finished chapter. For the first time in years, there was no weight in my chest, no echo of someone else's voice inside my head. Just mine. By autumn, Maple Ridge had softened into gold. The trees outside my window looked like they were burning gently, the kind of beauty that comes only when something's about to end and doesn't fight it. I woke up early most mornings now, not because I had to, but because the quiet before sunrise felt like mine. I'd make my single cup of Colombian roast, 2 sugars, and stand by the window as the first light touched the countertop. There was peace in the smallness of that ritual, the rhythm, the restraint. For 17 years, I'd built my mornings around someone else's preferences. Now, the sweetness of my coffee was an act of independence. Across the table sat an empty chair. It wasn't a symbol anymore, it was just furniture. Some days, I'd drape my cardigan over it. Other days, I'd let the sunlight claim it. Either way, it didn't ache like it used to. That's what healing turned out to be. Not forgetting, but no longer flinching. Work became less about surviving and more about leading. I started mentoring younger librarians, mostly women balancing ambition with exhaustion. We'd sit in the break room, surrounded by donated books and mismatched mugs. They'd ask about policies and promotions, and sometimes they'd ask about my story. "Is it true," one of them said once, "that you exposed your husband's affair and still managed to keep your cool?" I smiled. No one keeps their cool. They just learn to move through the fire without catching. They laughed, but I meant it. The trick wasn't calmness, it was purpose. When you know where you're going, you don't have to scream to be heard. The book club evolved too. We renamed it First Tuesday Wines, half joke, half brand. Avery handled the legal filings. Martha from the reference desk designed the label, a glass with candlelight reflected in it. Sales were small but steady. People asked if it was about revenge. I said it was about recovery. The tagline on every bottle read, "For every woman who's ever waited too long at the dinner table." It sold out the first week. Every few months, Lucas and I played tennis on Saturdays. Badly. He'd show up with a cooler of water and dad jokes. I'd show up with sunscreen and low expectations. Sometimes, he'd ask how I felt about the past. "It's like a scar," I told him one morning after a wild serve bounced over the fence. "It doesn't hurt anymore, but it still itches when the weather changes." He nodded. "That's biology. Healing makes you sensitive." "Then I must be very healed," I said, and we both laughed until the ball machine beeped out of protest. We weren't friends because of shared tragedy. We stayed friends because neither of us needed saving anymore. As winter crept in, the world outside slowed again. Holiday lights appeared on porches. People pretended resolutions could reset time. Ethan's name appeared once more in a quiet corner of a business journal. Former executive pleads guilty to compliance violation, sentenced to community service and restitution. No photo, no quote. Just a paragraph. I read it once and turned the page. Not out of cruelty, out of closure. That chapter was archived, filed under lessons learned. On New Year's Eve, I hosted dinner again. Not a celebration, just a gathering. Avery brought her partner. Nico arrived late, arms full of wine and half a cheesecake. Mrs. Delaney wore sequins that caught every flicker of light. We talked about everything except the past. When the clock hit midnight, I raised my glass. To better standards, I said. Avery tilted her head. Not better men? I grinned. They're optional. Everyone laughed. The laughter echoed off the kitchen walls, warm and full. For once, I didn't feel like I was trying to reclaim something I was just living. Later that night, when the guests were gone and the dishes were stacked, I sat by the window again. Outside, the snow had begun to fall soft, relentless, forgiving. I thought about all the ways revenge stories usually end with fire, with spectacle, with grand gestures that look good on camera. Mine ended with paperwork, patience, and coffee for one. Because the best revenge isn't noise. It's standards. The kind that keeps you from dialing 17 times for someone who never meant to answer. The kind that builds a life so solid no one else gets to shake it again. I looked around my kitchen, the new candle, the single mug, the green plant stretching toward the window, and realized this was the epilogue I hadn't known I needed. No music, no monologue, just quiet proof that I'd survived beautifully. Before I went to bed, I wrote one line in my father's old notebook, the one that once held our first Tuesday plans. Peace is when you stop needing an audience for your strength. Then I closed it, slid it back on the shelf, and turned off the light. The house exhaled with me, and for the first time in years, I slept through the night without dreaming of anyone's absence. CTA for YouTube narration. If you've ever waited for someone to pick up, only to realize you deserved better, silence, hit that like button right now. Share this story with someone who needs proof that the calm after betrayal isn't emptiness, it's victory. And subscribe for more stories about women who don't just survive, they rebuild. One quiet morning at a time.